As the country recovers from a youth-led movement that compelled the education minister to resign, it is important to understand the deeper signaling from it all. On the surface, they were angry about exam paper leaks, but underneath it revealed something far deeper that wasn't just about a generation who was excited about living in the fastest growing large economy, and that meant very little for them if it did not create stable jobs or safeguard their savings. Their concerns are not unfounded. After all, only a handful of states in India earn more per capita income than the World Bank's benchmark. The country as a whole is still in the lower middle income bucket. And a few months ago, the Prime Minister asked citizens to cut back on gold and foreign travel, a kind of national tighten your belt kind of message. So the real question then is, with the frustration of youth on unemployment, with the country facing headwinds from global uncertainty, where is the glimmer of hope? What can we actually do? Today, we put those questions on the table to the person who used to manage India's money from inside the finance ministry. He's not shy about naming uncomfortable numbers, but we will push back on those and ask him on the moves that we can make to emerge a winner. So if you want to know whether your money and investments are sitting on a macro landmine or whether there is still a play to be made, hit subscribe now. Joining us is Mr. Subhash Chandra Garg, former Finance Secretary of India. Mr. Garg, thank you very much for joining us on Value for Money.
Thank you, Yashodhara. My pleasure.
So I'm going to hit the ground running. There was a lot of talk in that movement on unemployment. But it's clearly not the case that there are no opportunities in the market. If you look at sectors like AI, cloud, cybersecurity, renewable energy, fintech, food tech, employers are struggling to find qualified skilled laborers and they are willing to in fact pay money to them. So at the same time, the youth employment and youth unemployment rather was a very big underlining current that was there in the movement. So how do you explain this gap?
I think there are two fundamental shifts which are taking place and which probably accounts for what's happening here. One, we are changing from what was the industrial economy for the last 100 years at least.
Correct.
To a digital information services economy. That's one big shift. So the mindsets of the governments, of the parents, of the people, which prepare the youth for those industrial society, ecosystem, economics, employment, jobs, that is faltering, that is disappearing. So they have skills, they have education, which is increasingly irrelevant for getting them jobs into the new economy. That's one big change to my mind, which is happening. The second one is this big sort of incursion, if I may call it, of the artificial intelligence. So that is where the mind jobs, the jobs which are done with mind. Until the industrial age, it was body which was primarily the job creator. Now it's the AI or the artificial intelligence which is disrupting the mind jobs. So you find the current generation, most of which is into the services in the mind jobs, so to say, getting disrupted by this new force. Unless we take that into account and modify our systems of education, skills, employment, trainings and those kind of things, and make the job seekers, the youth, aligned with what the value creation requires, you would have the problems what you're seeing today.
Mr. Garg, then that is really not a problem that necessarily the government can solve immediately, right?
See, the economy is a sum total of so many actors working on it. The industrialists, the entrepreneurs, the government, the youth, the the labor, all of them work together to see what is happening in the economy. And when such fundamental changes take place, everyone has to adjust. The government's job is policy. Government is not an employment provider or a creator. So the government's job is not to add the direct employment, but the government's job is to use two big instruments which it has. One is the policy instrument, to nudge the economy towards the new realities. And second is to use its own budget. It spends quite a lot of money, right, to sort of get the new skills, the new requirement, rather than doing the old things. So if a government keeps spending billions of rupees on sustaining the old kind of jobs, like in agriculture or otherwise, or undertake skill undertakings or programs which are for the older kind of system, then the situation which you described, that the new industry is looking for the people and the people are not available, and the old industry has surplus of people available.
So let's talk about something that the government can change. During the recent Middle Eastern war and the recent oil spike, we heard the Prime Minister come up on the stage and say that, we should defer foreign travel, we should stop buying gold. You, for one person, said that that speech kind of tiptoed around the real issues. And just taking a point from that, if we were to talk about oil dependence, if we talk about our economy being heavily dependent on oil, some person can argue that our economy has also grown to $4 trillion. So now, if we've grown to that stage, naturally even our dependence on oil will grow. So where is the alarming factor there? And why do you say that the Prime Minister tiptoed around the real issue? And what is the real issue?
See, when you grow, the energy consumption will grow. It's a fact. I don't think it requires any sort of counter or dispute about it. You can reduce the energy intensity of the production or GDP, but the energy consumption will go, right? So this is fair. This is the point. How do you manage the energy requirement going up, right? That is where every country has a different situation, right? The countries like India, which has no sort of oil inside its own bubble, so to say, or like China for that matter, it also did not have oil. It did not have coal. We had coal at least. So when the energy requirement of China and India was going up, so China used to import enormous amount of coal and the oil. We also have to import oil unless we decide to sort of get to another sort of energy medium to take care of our energy requirement. So you saw the countries like China shifting massively towards solar power generation, renewable energy and all. We have also tried, but we have not done that much. We have done much less, and therefore our dependence on the oil import is going up. It will go up. There is no doubt about it that we will need more oil unless we get some alternative energy.
So why did you feel that the Prime Minister was tiptoeing around the real issues, and what could be those real issues?
See, any calls for expenditure cuts, right, is actually anti-growth. Expenditure is growth. So if you are asking somebody to reduce your expenditure, you are actually anti-growth. That's one. Second, what you're trying to say, let us say gold, for example. Why do we import so much of gold, right? For hundreds of years, India used to actually get a lot of gold in settlement of the surplus of goods which we exported. It's only after the Industrial Revolution made us the importer. After the independence, more so, that we are in current account deficit and all, and we are gold inflow against the sale of services and goods has stopped, and on top of that we are buying gold. So one should study a problem that why do we import so much of gold? You can't simply by asking people not to buy gold in a situation where your own central bank was buying gold massively. So, and since gold in last 2-3 years had appreciated significantly, anyone looking for some gains would naturally think that maybe investment. I'm not advocating. I know it's trickier, but if you go by that trend, that investment in gold will make you faster money. That's what made a lot of people come with the flow and for investment in ETFs and others. Absolutely. So if you advise only, which is unlikely to be accepted by anyone, on rational considerations, that advice is meaningless.
Fair enough. We'll pick up this topic on gold a little later in the interview, Mr. Garg. I do want to stick to the point of energy dependence, because with the whole E20 ethanol blending, with the fact that we have hit the Paris Agreement of our target of 50% non-fossil power capacity 5 years ahead of schedule, the government can argue that we are doing a lot. In fact, sticking to the whole E20 specifically, the 20% ethanol blending has been argued to be a cause for cutting down on oil imports. It's helping the farmers. Grains that were typically thrown, the sugar industries come out and said that grains that were typically thrown are now getting used. So it seems like it's a win-win with the capacity, with this new change. So why do you think E20 is the wrong answer to a problem you yourself call as very serious?
See, E20 is one of the answers for the problem, right? But whenever we do the policy shifts, we must consider the whole situation, the scenarios, right? Where do we get E20? By the way, it goes into the petrol, and all said and done, if 20% of the petrol requirement is met, we consume about 20% of the petroleum products as petrol. So 20% of that is 4% is the maximum difference which it will make to our energy imports. Not that massive, but that doesn't matter. Even 4%, 2% is material, that's fine. But where does the E20 comes? There are two main sources, right? One source is the sugar cane, and the other source is the grains, food grains like rice or wheat, etc. I hope you're aware that you require 5,000 liters of water to produce 1 liter of ethanol through sugarcane. That is the massive use of the water for getting the ethanol made. The big risk is that the surplus situation may not last always. For example, even this year, if you would see, the sugarcane production is somewhat down, right? Sugar production is going to be. So how do you in such situations feed the production of ethanol? So if you build a strategy to substitute some part of your petroleum products on such risky, unstable situation, even that, there is a sound argument for building this capacity for use in years when you have surplus, and not to be used in years when you don't have. But if you have a government which thinks that this is a panacea, this is a solution for always to come, and instead of E20, you should plan for E85 or more, without doing this kind of mathematics, then you would land into a problem. So if consumers are not or the users of petrol in their cars and scooters and others are not that confident about use of it fitting for them, and you don't address that concern. So obviously consumers have not asked for it, right? It's not a consumer demand, right? So who has asked for it? One is the sugar industry, another is the government, and the third is, let us say, the petroleum companies, right? For petroleum companies, if you look at the economics, today they're getting the ethanol 20 at about 70-71 rupees per liter. Whereas the imported cost for their petrol, when the price is about 80, is only about 50-52 rupees. So for them, actually it's a costlier fuel. Now, ultimately it boils down to only the interest of the sugar industry. Right, sugar industry has two competing products. One is sugar and the other is, let's say, ethanol now. If they make more money out of ethanol than sugar, they'll be happy to produce ethanol. So that is where there is a real interest. That is what is being serviced. If we can fit in with a wider policy network solution, considering everything together, it's a solution, but it's a partial solution. One more thing I think we should keep in mind, you obviously reduce your bill if you import less. So let us say if 3 to 4% of equivalent petrol, you've not imported the petroleum products, to that extent you have saved, right? But mind you, you also export rice, you also export sugar, you have not exported them to produce this. So the math should be complete, that what you saved on petroleum product and what you lost on not exporting the rice or the sugar, that should be taken together, and that is the gain. If it turns out that you could have earned more by exporting sugar and rice than saving the petroleum products, then you are actually not gaining even on the foreign. Now they have not been even consulted at all. Huge amount of doubts have been created in their minds now, right, about the efficacy and the correctness of that. I would watch the number whenever it comes, that there is a E0 petrol available, but that's available at 165 rupees against this which is available at 100 rupees. Are people shifting to buy that oil? That would be a sign of desperation, not a sign of this. Why don't you give a choice of E0 normal petrol or E10 normal petrol? You may subsidize, you may make this E20 cheaper. So some people who feel that this is fine with them and they get cheaper oil, like we got cheaper CNG for some time, etc., then they will buy it. Why force it on the people?
Fair enough, Mr. Garg. I think that's a very valid point, and there can't be an argument for not showing the complete picture and also not taking into account the biggest stakeholder, which in this case is the consumer. Another thing that you've argued about extensively, if I can use that word, is India's reluctance to accept Chinese investment in solar, batteries, EVs, and so on and so forth. Some will argue that should India depend on such cheap green imports from China, risking our own jobs, risking our own local industry, risking the fact that we may not become self-reliant in these sectors? Or is it worthwhile to pay more now?
See, I think there is a lot of merit in case you import something at a higher cost, if you are able to, over a reasonable period of time, substitute that with your own production so that your investment actually comes off, right? You would find that we are between the two choices of importing technology by way of investment from the supplier country or importing the products, which does not result into imported technology.
Correct.
You are actually going for the latter. You are not going for the former, right? And if you don't go for the former, there is no way in 5 years, 10 years, or 50 years for you to actually become Atmanirbhar. You would never become Atmanirbhar. You would become permanently dependent. There is another side I think we must always consider. Our trade deficit with China is now exceeds $100 billion. It used to be less than $35 billion a couple of years back. Today it's $100 billion deficit, which only means that we are importing massive amount of products from them, right? And you have no control on the products. If the other side wants to sort of squeeze you, it can put restrictions on the export, like what happened on modules and other kind of things.
They've done that.
Or fertilizers or some things, right? Because you are in their hands. You need those for your consumption, for your production, right? So, whereas if you, let us say, allow a Chinese factory to be set up here, right? What happens? They will make investment. Your people will get employment. You will be able to tax them to get your tax revenue. And in case of difficulties, you can also put a squeeze on them. So, in my judgment, an investment from China strategy is any day better even to achieve this so-called objective of Atmanirbhar Bharat, right? In this world of today, there is nothing called Atmanirbhar. This is a bogey, right? Atmanirbhar in every production is in impossibility. No one in the world produces everything, right? No one can produce everything. It's a mutual dependence. As long as you are able to earn enough by exporting to buy or import from them, you are Atmanirbhar. That is the kind of Atmanirbharta which is needed. Not that every product or any product will make necessarily because somebody else is making it better. I think you can discuss industry by industry and you would find that the vulnerability, the weakness of Indian industry today is essentially because we have not invested in technological development ourselves, and we are not also importing the technologies from elsewhere to master it in time to come.
So, moving away, Mr. Garg, to another term which is used much like Atmanirbhar Bharat is Viksit Bharat. And you've written extensively on how we should not talk about Viksit Bharat, but we should focus on Viksit Bharatiya. So what does that mean? How do you shift the focus to Viksit Bharatiya, and what does that really mean? What does that entail?
I think both these concepts, I think, require discussion. Viksit Bharat and Viksit Bharatiya, right? Or Indian. So, Viksit Bharat today, I would ask you, have you tried to understand this? What does it mean?
I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah, so like you, everyone is trying to figure out what does it mean, why it has been brought in, right? Why is it set so far away where no one can be held accountable, 2047 or something, right? Are we moving towards that? So that requires first to understand why did this Viksit Bharat kind of concept came in. If you recall, and I was involved in a way in that journey, in 2019, I was still in the government when Nirmala Sitharaman read that report, and we talked about the $5 trillion economy by 24-25, right? That is on record, that's there. A very specific target was set, right? And it was not even doubling the economy. 2.7 to 5 in 6 years is a fairly achievable. Unfortunately, because of so many reasons, we can discuss about that if needed, the government failed to achieve the $5 trillion. We are still not 5 trillion. We are now sitting in 26, 27. More than 2 years have gone for that period. We are still struggling to be a 4 trillion. This year we have gone back to 3.7 or 3.8 or something. In 6 or 7 years, we have not even improved by 1 trillion, right? Because of what is happening to rupee and the massive depreciation and things like that. So, the government stopped talking about 5 trillion. The government no longer talks about 10 trillion. So I see this, that if somebody talks about 2047 now, and with a loosely defined terminology of Viksit Bharat, then I see this as an escapism. That somebody is trying to escape from the responsibility, from the accountability. That if you can't attain anything. So I see this as, in terms of optics and in terms of how do you communicate to the people, an attempt to shift to an unaccountable, unachievable, vague kind of goal. That is the one big problem with the kind of concepts like Viksit Bharat. The other one is related to that, all right, if you want to think long, there is a merit, because you can't change things in a very short, overnight, or in a very short period of time, and therefore you think long. That is where, if you think of 2047 or 2050, when India will complete 100 years as republic, fine, it's 2050 gels more, forget 2047, align it with 2050, and then set up, let us say we set up a target of Viksit Bharat defined in terms of, because you need some definition.
Correct.
So let us say you adopt the World Bank's definition of being a high income country. And that high income country is defined in terms of per capita income.
Correct.
That is where the Indian angle comes, right? Bharatiya angle comes. You look from the point of the people, that what is their average income, right? And then you define, and then, so you set it out. Today you are at about $14,000, which is the cutoff mark. Let us you take by 2050, something close to $25,000 at that time. And then you set out a path, a plan, or a policy shift to get to that. That is what the government initially said, that we will present a roadmap for reaching to Viksit Bharat. Today, after talking or setting this Viksit Bharat kind of goal 4 years back, nobody is talking about the roadmap. Nobody is presenting how would we reach there, right? So this is the problem with the kind of concepts we have. I don't think we should simply remain that if we chant this more and more, we will reach there, right? Chanting, you can't reach there.
Now, I think that certainly, Mr. Garg, I think that one of the things that you've said, that amongst many other things, that there has to be a roadmap, and that roadmap has to have milestones and very tangible numbers or data oriented milestones that can be then tracked. And I feel that that is something that, I mean, of course there could be exigencies like the war and as you spoke about the dollar rupee, but that
when you plan, you account for all of these things.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what is a plan? It's not a clerical statement. A plan has to take into account the entire technological change which is going around or might come up, and account for all those scenarios and contingencies, and then you present this.
Help us decode something else, Mr. Garg, also. Something that's happened between June 8th and July 17th of this year, where India attracted close to about $21 billion of forex inflows under the RBI's special FCNR window. And over that period, our reported forex reserves rose only by $6 billion. So What we got was $21 billion, but our forex reserves only rose by $6 billion. The rest seems to have been absorbed, or if dollars are coming in at that scale, why aren't our reserves looking healthier?
So there are two potential explanations for this, and RBI would do well to sort of provide factual case for that. One possible explanation is, by the way, just for your information, the RBI put out a statement on 20th July, giving the data for 17th July, that about 21 odd billion dollars of inflows have come in three schemes which it had announced on 5th of June. Most of that is in the FCNR 17 odd billion, and the other. So it's an RBI statement.
Yes.
It doesn't have more data than this, right? So RBI puts out the data in terms of foreign exchange or specific deposits kind of thing. So deposits data we have in the public domain is only up to May end, not even June, right? So one possible explanation is that, of course, since there is a lot of demand for foreign exchange, let's say only these two factors are there. One is the foreign exchange demand extra, and the other one is the inflow. So if in 21 billion, if there was extra demand for foreign exchange of 16 billion, then that went away and the difference remained. So to that extent, these flows in a way went to meet. Otherwise, if this was not there, then the foreign exchange reserves would have been down by 16 billion. That's one explanation. The second explanation is that unless the RBI clarifies this, that these inflows may be gross inflows, not the net inflows. Let me explain how it is. For example, FCNR deposits, right? If FCNR deposits, new FCNR deposits have been created on the maturing FCNR deposits of the earlier time, right? Then it will show up as a gross inflow, but on the net this is not, and that will not affect the foreign exchange. There is another thing which I think if you do little more, that's where I say that transparency, speaking the full truth is very essential. We have close to about $160 billion in the NRI deposits, right? 100 billion odd is in a deposit called NRE, non-resident external account deposits, in which also the benefits of repatriation is there. You can take it back. The interest paid is also tax exempt. But the only thing which is there is that you don't have the foreign exchange risk. So if you create a deposit when the rupee was 80 to a dollar, now you have to pay 100 to get a dollar, then you have depreciated to that extent. So that disadvantage is there in NRE deposit, right? The FCNRB deposit is free from this thing also, because you will get dollar for dollar. Right, you invested $1, you get $1 back, right?
Correct.
Right, and therefore it has this additional advantage. Until these schemes were brought, there was a difference between the interest earned in rupee terms and the interest earned on the dollar deposit. And a lot of people thought that difference is higher than the depreciation of rupee, and therefore they made NRE deposits rather than FCNRB deposits. That, to my mind, explains why the 100 billion in NRE deposit against 34 billion of FCNRB. Now this scheme has changed this completely.
Correct.
Now your rupee interest and the dollar interest is same, right? So it takes away all the sort of advantage of the NRE deposit, which might, in my judgment, prompt a lot of people to convert the NRE deposit
Into FCNR.
into FCNRB deposits, right? Is that happening? That people are converting. If they're converting, it will show up as gross
Exactly.
inflow, but will not show up as net inflow.
inflow.
Right. So, problem with our country is
That's not the complete picture.
we don't speak full picture.
Full picture.
We don't trust our people. We just want to create some messages that we have got 21 billion. Wow, 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 wow. Right. Explain this. This is a legitimate question which you asked. That why is there a 16 billion difference?
No, I think what you're saying, it's not. I would leave it for some other expert to comment on it, because I'm not the expert. But yeah, it's food for thought and for some serious thought. I will take you back on this year's budget. Mr. Garg, the government's budget for 26-27 outputs and outcomes document you said was lacked complete seriousness, and that we are leaning too heavily on direct taxes and market-linked levies like STT, etc. So what, in your view, was the single biggest flaw in this budget? And what would you have done differently if you were in the North Bloc?
See, let me sort this out for you, because your question has many things in it, right? Number one, outcome document. It did not reflect the outcome and outputs, right, correctly. By the way, output and outcomes typically relates to the year for which actual data is available.
Okay.
So when you present 26-27 budget, this is available 2 years before.
Okay.
So 24-25 only we can expect to have a statement about the outputs and the outcomes.
Okay.
Right. Government presents an output outcome statements along with the budget papers.
Okay.
But just try to go and see this document for 26-27 budget presented this. Does it have the data for 24-25?
So you're saying it doesn't have?
It doesn't have.
So how can it not have the data for 24?
Because this is not what the government wants to do it. It's presenting a statement about the target set for 26-27, not what was achieved.
But why would it do that? That is the basis of accountability.
Correct. That is why. But the bigger unaccountability question is, and nobody questions them.
Mr. Garg, we as regular citizens may not be aware of it, but there are certainly people who are aware of it who should question this.
See, in our system, a lot of things have become simple formality. I'll give you another question, another instance where no one holds account. We have a law called Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act, FRBM Act, right? It, as it stands on the statute today, says that the government would achieve fiscal deficit to GDP ratio of 3% in 1920, right? 1920, right? Or 2021, I think 2021, right? More than 6 years have gone. In every year, this has been breached, and breached by a heavy margin. Even today, we run about 4.5% or 4.6%, right? Your law, your statute requires you to have fiscal deficit not exceeding 3% of GDP. And you are, year after year, mauling it, ignoring it, and no one is questioning it. Does anyone question? At least if you are not able to stick to the law, abolish the law. That no, we don't want this law. But the lack of accountability is so much that no one considers it necessary to abolish it also. कोई पूछता ही नहीं तो फिर what is the problem? So there are problems. It's a big country. It's a big issues. We should try to solve them, contain them and solve them, rather than
Shove it under the carpet.
shoving under the carpet or trying to give half truths to sort of mislead.
Mr. Garg, we've spoken very candidly today, and you've been very sort of open about how there is a lack of accountability, but a lot of that blame also rests on people like us who don't question
Of
the
course.
system. Also, you've spoken about the uncomfortable half truth and how we are also accepting it as half truth and being merry with life. You also spoke about a changing landscape of industry, understanding of the new kind of job requirements that are there, and what the government cannot do and what it can do. You also reflected on the energy dependence that India has. You spoke about the importance of China investment versus China import. If there was one macroeconomic policy this government has gotten absolutely right and spot on in the last 2 years or few years, what would that be?
See, I wouldn't say that the government can get anything absolutely right or anything absolutely wrong. But substantially right, if you were to pick up, I think on the payment space has been good work. And until some time on the housing and this Jal Yojana, this water scheme, that was also a good work. So there are many areas where something substantial, something good is happening. It's not that any government, I don't think you can pick up any government of the day in 75 or 80 years of India's history, which had done all right or all wrong. So I don't think it should be judged that if you got something absolutely or substantially right, that means you are a good government. Or if you got something very bad, for example, let's say the licensing, socialistic pattern of society, was an absolutely wrong kind of thing. But the then government had also done a lot of good things. But all this shows up. So by 1990, the 35 years of the Nehruvian and the Indira Gandhi government had brought the country to such a big pass. We had very low growth. We had all kinds of problems. Likewise, this 13, 14 years, now 12 years of the accumulated sort of, I would say, mismanagement of the economy is creating massive problems. Right? We must recognize this and set the things right. Otherwise, they would be.
So essentially, it is not about getting everything right. It's not humanly possible to do that. And it's also not about getting everything wrong.
Yeah.
But it's about a template or a framework whereby the government themselves and perhaps even we as citizens can assess directionally what are the things that are going wrong, what are the things that are going right, and to re-engineer ourselves basis that.
Correct.
And also, as you said, that if something is not working, then, abolish it or remove it instead of continuing to harbor it and then having to deflect on that year after year. This is a very, very peaceful conversation on some of the important things that you spoke about that will help us and also help the viewers understand the headline numbers a little better. And it's also viewers to you, so that for your money, for your portfolio, you'll now have a better context that will help you make better decisions and also read between the lines. And as Mr. Garg said, ask some questions. Tell us in the comments which of these numbers or these pointers that Mr. Garg gave excited you the most and which of them left you a little more worried. Because understanding the problem is only half the battle. The other half is acting before it is too late.
I'll say one more thing. I think in our kind of debates in this country, there is one systemic problem. We tend to discuss persons more than the policies and the issues. If we can get out of this mindset of discussing persons and focus on the issues and the policies, I think we can do better.